what does it feel like to live in a town that's suddenly abandoned, quiet, and haunted only by shadows of the past? Pennsylvania holds dozens of stories like this. Towns that were once filled with the laughter of children, the roar of mining machines, and the footsteps of workers have now become silent stages, inhabited only by the wind and memories. From mining villages that burned forever like Centralia to strange experiments like Concrete City, every corner leaves us wondering, how can a place come to life and then die so quickly? First, there's Lausanne, a town with an important place in Pennsylvania's early industrial history. It was founded in the late 1700s along the Lehigh River during the rise of coal mining and river transport. Lausanne Landing, part of Lausanne Township, once served as a key stopover for trade and a toll point on the Lehigh and Susquehanna turnpike. But its glory faded quickly. After new rail lines were built and floods struck the area, Lausanne lost its pulse. Today, Lausanne Township still exists, with around 224 residents as of 2023, but Lausanne Landing, the town's birthplace, has been reduced to stone foundations and a name in old archives. While Lausanne faded slowly due to the long decline of the coal industry, Yellow Dog Village tells a more modern and tragic story. This small town in Armstrong County was built in the early 1900s as housing for coal miners. The name Yellow Dog is said to come from Yellow Dog contracts, agreements that banned workers from joining labor unions. Despite its bitter origins, the community once thrived. But after the mine shut down, jobs disappeared, and families gradually moved away. By the 2000s, the village was completely abandoned. Homes were left to decay, swallowed by moss and peeling paint. Today, Yellow Dog Village stands as an open-air museum, silent, eerie, and filled with a strange nostalgia for a life lived a century ago. This one might sound familiar. Centralia was once a bustling anthracite coal mining town in Columbia County, with over 1,000 residents at its peak in the mid-20th century. Everything changed in 1962 when an underground mine fire was accidentally ignited and never went out. The blaze spread through the coal seams beneath the town, releasing toxic smoke and causing the ground to cave in unexpectedly. Eventually, the government decided to relocate the population. Homes were demolished, businesses shut down. Today, only a handful of residents remain, along with empty streets and a church that still stands tall. Centralia has become a haunting symbol of how a town can vanish, not through war, but because of an underground fire that refuses to die. Now we turn to Brownsville, a town in Fayette County that was once a key trade hub along the Monongahela River. In the 19th century, Brownsville was known for shipbuilding and as a transport link for Pittsburgh's booming steel industry. The town once thrived with theaters, hotels, and busy streets. But when the steel industry collapsed, Brownsville went down with it. A population that once numbered in the thousands has dropped sharply, and many historic buildings now stand abandoned. Brownsville is a mirror of how a town with a glorious past can fade into quietness, overtaken by time and shifting economics. In Chester County, there's an old village called Frick's Lock that feels frozen in time. Built in the 18th century along the Schuylkill Canal, it once thrived on river trade and railroads. But everything changed in the 1960s when Philadelphia Electric Company, PECO, built the Limerick nuclear power plant nearby. For safety reasons, the entire village was evacuated. Homes were abandoned, windows boarded up, and the streets went silent. Today, Frick's Lock is a historic site open for limited tours. The old buildings still stand, quiet but full of stories, reminding us how modernization can kill the very towns once created to serve progress. Unlike small ghost towns that are completely empty, Monessen in Westmoreland County is more of a semi-ghost town. In the early 20th century, Monessen grew rapidly thanks to its steel mills and manufacturing industry. Its population once soared past 20,000, complete with a bustling downtown, movie theaters, shops, and busy factory workers filling the streets. But when the American steel industry collapsed in the late 1970s and 1980s, Monessen fell with it. The factories closed, jobs disappeared, and thousands of residents left. Today, the population has dropped to around 6,600, leaving behind empty homes, abandoned buildings, and a quiet, fading downtown. In the heart of Clearfield County lie the remnants of a mining town called Peale. Founded in the 1880s by the New York Central Railroad, along with a coal mining company, the town was once home to over 2,500 residents. But Peale's life was short. As the mines began to run dry in the early 1900s, the jobs vanished, and families left their homes behind. Buildings were either torn down or collapsed on their own, and by the 1950s, Peale was completely abandoned. Today, Peale can only be found through scattered stone foundations in the woods and old footpaths that were once bustling. It stands as a ghost of the past, a reminder that a town can rise and fall as quickly as the industry that gave it life. If Peale shows how fast a coal town can disappear when the fires go out, Scotia reminds us that not every dream of an industrial empire can survive. Located near State College in Centre County, Scotia was founded in the late 1800s when Andrew Carnegie launched an iron ore mining operation there. Hundreds of workers and their families lived in modest homes, with a school and small shops forming the heart of the community. Unfortunately, Scotia's iron ore turned out to be low quality and couldn't compete with mines in the Midwest. By the early 1900s, operations stopped and the town slowly emptied. Now, the forest has taken back the tracks and buildings, leaving only faint foundations. From the coal of Peale to the iron of Scotia, the outcome was the same: industrial ambition overtaken by reality. If Scotia is proof of how Carnegie's big dreams were defeated by poor iron ore, then Cold Spring died because tourism couldn't last. Founded in the 1850s, Cold Spring was built as a health resort. It featured a grand hotel, mineral spas, and inns that drew visitors from Philadelphia and New York. For decades, the resort stood as a symbol of luxury in the Pennsylvania mountains. But difficult access and a major fire in the early 1900s sealed its fate. Guests stopped coming. The hotel never recovered, and the community that supported the resort disappeared with it. Today, only brick foundations and an old well remain in the woods, leaving Cold Spring as a quiet monument to a brief moment of past grandeur. The story of Laquin in Bradford County takes us back to the short but intense era of the lumber industry. Founded in the early 1900s, Laquin quickly grew as a company town when the Barclay Lumber Company began large-scale operations. Hundreds of workers lived in simple wooden homes. There was a school, a church, even a sports field, all funded by the company. At its peak, Laquin had around 2,000 residents, living off the roar of sawmills and trainloads of timber. But like many logging towns, Laquin didn't last long. Once the surrounding forest was completely cut down, the workers moved on, the company shut down, and the town was left behind. Today, almost nothing remains, just foundations, old trails, and the stories. Laquin stands as a harsh lesson in industries that take everything and leave nothing for the future. If Laquin was swallowed by the forest after the timber ran out, Eckley Miners Village in Luzerne County has survived as a living museum. Founded in the mid-1800s, this village was a typical coal company town with rows of worker housing, a small school, a church, and a company-owned store. Hundreds of immigrant families from Ireland, Wales, and Poland once filled the streets with language, music, and tradition. Though mining stopped in the mid-20th century, Eckley didn't collapse completely. In the 1970s, the village was used as a filming location for the Molly Maguires and has been preserved ever since as an open-air museum. Today, visitors can walk through original mining homes, see how hard life was for the workers, and experience the atmosphere of a 19th century coal town frozen in time. From Brownsville, we move to Shenandoah, a coal mining town in Schuylkill County. In the late 19th century, Shenandoah became a magnet for immigrants, especially from Eastern Europe, who came to work in the anthracite mines. Its population once exploded to over 20,000 people, making it one of the most densely populated towns in Pennsylvania at the time. But when the coal industry collapsed, Shenandoah's economy crumbled with it. Today, the population has dropped to around 5,000, leaving behind rows of old buildings, beautifully ornate Catholic churches, and streets that are more quiet than busy. Shenandoah is a classic example of a mining town that lost its industrial heartbeat. Wehrum is a ghost that barely left a trace. This town was originally built by the Pennsylvania Coal and Coke Company to house coal miners. Around 250 homes, a school, a church, and even a hotel once stood here, with more than 1,200 people calling it home. But the town didn't last long. When the mine shut down in the 1930s, life here vanished. Today, only moss-covered stone foundations remain, rusted rail lines, and the whisper of wind through the Blacklick Valley forest. Wehrum isn't just a dead town. It's a symbol of how quickly a community can disappear when its source of life is gone. Then there's Livermore, a town that didn't vanish because of fire or an exhausted mine, but because of water. Livermore, Pennsylvania, was a small town in Westmoreland County that once thrived along the banks of the Conemaugh River. In the mid-20th century, the government built the Conemaugh River Dam as a flood control project, and Livermore's fate was sealed. Residents were relocated, homes were demolished, and parts of the town were submerged under rising waters. Today, all that remains are stories of roads that disappeared, old graves that still stand, and a town slowly swallowed by a lake. And finally, Concrete City was a grand experiment that ended up as a silent monument. In 1911, the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad built 20 identical concrete houses for coal workers in Luzerne County. At first, they were considered modern and fireproof, but it didn't take long to realize the truth. Cracked walls, damp interiors, and an overall uncomfortable living space. Though hundreds of people lived there for a time, the town was abandoned just a decade later. Since then, the concrete structures have stood frozen in time, covered in moss and graffiti, like massive statues that refuse to fall. Today, Concrete City is a unique historical site where visitors can see the physical remains of an industrial ambition that never quite became a home.